Hi! In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to make this bracelet right here. Well, it's not really a bracelet yet, but it will be. Well, and this bracelet here is my own original design, and it is a part of my Spikes and Spines series, and it is called the Evergreen Branch bracelet because it looks like the branches you would find on an evergreen tree or a Christmas tree or whatever you call it in your region where you live. So, to make this, you're going to need your loom. I will be using a Rainbow Loom. You will also need a hook and a clip. Any clip should work. Same with the hook, any hook should work. And you will also need rubber bands. Alright, so as you can see here, I have two different groups, the A and the B group of rubber bands, and I'm going to explain what each group is. This A group, or these A rubber bands, will be the actual single chain in the bracelet. So these brown rubber bands in the example, and they will be the cocoa rubber bands from Rainbow Loom in this tutorial. You will also, these B rubber bands here, so the second group, will be the actual little, I guess you could say they're leaves. I'm not sure what they're called. I think they're called leaves. I have a feeling they're called something else. If I'm wrong, there will be a caption. But that's what these B rubber bands are. And you will need a lot of rubber bands to make this bracelet. So, the number of rubber bands you're going to need for each group is going to appear on the screen now. Alright. So anyway, now that you know what you're going to need, get your supplies and use the pause button so that you can do so, and I will see you once you have everything. Alright, so to start, you're going to need half of your B color rubber bands, half of them, and well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be placing B color rubber bands first. So we're not going to be placing the single chain yet, we're actually going to be placing some of the leaves. Or whatever they're called. And all of these B rubber bands we're placing will be doubled, so that means we'll be placing 2 instead of 1. To begin, we're going to make sure that the arrows on our loom are pointing away from us, and we're going to get 2 B color rubber bands and place them on this second right pin. Just drop them there. So get 2 B color rubber bands and just drop them on the second right pin. Then we're going to get 2 more B color rubber bands and just drop them on this second middle pin. Now we're going to get 2 more B color rubber bands and just drop them on the second right pin. And notice how we are going in a kind of zigzag pattern between the right pin bar and the middle pin bar. And yeah, so notice that we're going to be going in this zigzag pattern as far down the loom as the rubber bands you have out right now will last. So I have 26 B color rubber bands out right now. It should last me 13 pins going down my loom. So make sure you have half of the number of rubber band, or half of the B color rubber bands you have out because it'll just simplify everything that you're doing right now to make this bracelet. So anyway, once again, we're going to get 2 B color rubber bands, and we're now going to place them on this third middle pin, still going in that zigzag pattern. Again, get 2 more B color rubber bands, place them on this third right pin, and well, that's all you're going to do. You're just going to continue in this zigzag pattern going between the middle and the right pin bars as far down your loom as half of your B color rubber bands will last you. So if you stop in the middle of your loom, don't worry, you just stop there and that's where you stop. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward. Just use the pause button if you need to. Alright, so as you can see here, I have stopped about halfway down my loom. So I'm not all the way down to the end yet. I'm literally right there, so I'm literally halfway through on my loom. So if you stop somewhere in the middle of your loom, that's alright. That is supposed to happen, unless you have a really huge wrist and you go all the way down to the end. But anyway, now what we're going to do is we're going to get our A color rubber bands, go ahead and get all of them, and go ahead and get your hook as well, because you might need it in this next step. Alright, so for this next step, we're going to be placing the single chain, or the double single chain, because it's 2 rubber bands instead of 1. We're going to be placing the double single chain of A color rubber bands, going down our loom, and yeah, so to do this, we're going to be using double rubber bands. The arrow on our loom needs to still be pointing away from us, and you might want to have your hook nearby because you might need it for this next step, depending on what kind of loom you have. So anyway, you're going to get 2 A color rubber bands to start. You're going to place them going outwards from this first middle pin to this second, or to this first right pin. Alright, so here's where you're going to, you might need your hook or you might not need your hook, depending on what loom you have and depending on your skill or something, I don't know. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be grabbing these 2 B color rubber bands underneath of this A color rubber band, pulling it over the pin, and then once it's completely off the pin and only on this rubber band above it, you can just let go of them. So if you need your hook for that, go ahead and get your hook and do that. But I'm going to go ahead and continue, so just use the pause button if you need to. So again, you're going to get 2 A color rubber bands. We're going to place them going inwards from this first right pin to this second middle pin. We're still going in that zigzag pattern. And now we're going to be grabbing these 2 B color rubber bands that are on the second middle pin and pulling them over the pin and onto this rubber band. So it's a little bit challenging for me on my Rainbow Loom, but I still grab them. But if you need your hook, what you would do is you would just go in, try to grab those rubber bands down there, and then pull them over the pin, and there we go. So that's all you do if you need your hook, but I don't think I will need my hook, so I'll just have mine sitting to the side. So you're just going to do this going all the way down your loom until you reach the end of the little, until you reach the end of your B color rubber band stuff. So I'll go ahead and show you again. You're going to get 2 A color rubber bands, place them going outwards now from this second middle pin to the second right pin. Then what you're going to do is you're going to grab these 2 B color rubber bands on this second right pin, pull them over the pin and onto this rubber band. Then you can let go of them, and now you can add more A color rubber bands. So make sure you pull the B color rubber bands over the pin before you add any more A color rubber bands, because if you add any more, the next A color rubber band you place will get in the way. So I'll go ahead and show you. So say I place another A color rubber band, or 2 more, you're supposed to be placing double. And then instead of grabbing these B color rubber bands, I just place 2 more. What's going to happen is when you go to grab these B color rubber bands, is it will, or they will, slide up onto both of the rubber bands, and you don't want that. You want it to be sliding up onto one of these rubber bands, but it's actually 2. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward myself, placing A color rubber bands until I get to the end of my little zigzag or my chain of B color rubber bands. You're going to continue as well. Just use the pause button if you need to. Also, when you reach the end of the B color rubber band stuff, you should still have more A color rubber bands left. Alright, so just use the pause button if you need to. Alright, so as you can see here, I have finished placing my A color rubber bands and moving around my B color rubber bands that I need to make my bracelet, and I still have A color rubber bands left. You should have some left over as well. And all we're going to be doing with these A color rubber bands is we're just going to place them in a zigzag pattern going down the rest of the way on our loom, or until we run out of A color rubber bands, because not everybody has the same length wrist or the same size wrist. So all you're going to do is you're going to get 2 A color rubber bands again, and you're going to place them going outwards or inwards depending on where you are. Just make sure you're placing them in a zigzag pattern. So I'm placing mine going inwards, and make sure you place 2 rubber bands instead of 1. Do the same thing again. You get 2 A color rubber bands and place them going in, continuing the zigzag pattern on your loom, and you're just going to continue until you run out of rubber bands. So yeah, let me go ahead and fast forward myself doing this next part. Just use the pause button if you need to. Alright, as you can see here, I've now finished placing my rubber bands of A color rubber bands going all the way down to the end of my loom, because that's where I apparently need to go. And I actually have 5 extra A color rubber bands. If you have extra rubber bands, you should have 1 extra. So it should be an odd number if you have any left over. And if you're like me and you have more than 1 extra A color rubber band, we will be doing something special for our bracelets, so just keep these A color rubber bands out. Even if you just have 1 extra A color rubber band, still keep it out, because this will be your cap band. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to place the rest of our B color rubber bands, so go ahead and get them out. Alright, we will not need our hooks for this next step, so you can go ahead and put your hook off to the side somewhere. And also, your extra A color rubber band or rubber bands, you can just put those off to the side as well with your hook. We're just going to need the rest of our B color rubber bands. I have 26 of these left, I'm pretty sure. And what we're going to do is we're going to place them. And placing them is the exact same as placing the first ones, except we won't be pulling them up onto any other rubber bands, except for when we start looming. Alright, so, because it's the same thing, we need to make sure the arrow is still pointing away from us on our loom. We're going to get 2 B color rubber bands, and we're just going to drop them, or just set them here, on this first right pin. Same thing like before again. Get 2 B color rubber bands, place them, or just drop them here on this second middle pin. So we're going in the zigzag pattern again. And it might get a little confusing because there's already rubber bands there, but just all you can really do is push down any rubber bands that are still on the pins. But anyway, you're going to get 2 more B color rubber bands and place them, still going in the zigzag pattern, on this second right pin. And still continuing the zigzag pattern, you're going to get 2 B color rubber bands and place them, or just drop them, on this third middle pin. And you're just going to continue the placing of 2 B color rubber bands at a time, going in a zigzag pattern between the middle and right pin bars until you get down to wherever you got down to the first time, or until you run out of rubber bands. So whenever you run out of rubber bands, you should stop at the same place you ran out of rubber bands the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and just fast forward. Just use the pause button if you need to. Alright, so as you can see here, my loom is a huge mess, but I have all of the rest of my B color rubber bands placed on my loom, And once that is true for you as well, we are now going to loom our bracelets, so hooray! So what we're going to do is we're going to get our hooks and our extra A color rubber band, unless you're like me and you have even more than one extra A color rubber band, then you will still just get one A color rubber band and your hook. Alright, so to begin looming your bracelet, you're going to need to turn your loom around, so now the arrow is pointing towards you, and if you don't have too many rubber bands that are B color rubber bands, your B color rubber bands should now be far away from you, and all of your just regular A color rubber bands should be closer. It might look like a little tree on your loom, but anyway. What we're going to do is we're going to get our extra A color rubber band. We're going to turn it into a cap band, and to do that we're going to twist this rubber band into an 8 or an infinity shape like so. Fold it like a book back on top of itself, and put this new rubber band, or now what it is, a cap band, on this first pin. Now, I say this first pin because not everybody's single chain starts on the same pin. Some people might be starting here, some people might be starting here, some people might be starting here. So, yeah, the instructions for this are going to be a little bit so I'm going to try my best to explain what you're supposed to do. So, hopefully, you already know how to make a single chain. What you're going to do to start is you're going to start here on this first pin where you just placed your cap band. Pull back this cap band, grab the bottom 2 rubber bands because these rubber bands are doubled, and loom it outwards or inwards in the zigzag pattern that we have been following the entire tutorial. So mine was going inwards from the left to the center pin. So, oh yes, also all of the rubber bands are now on the left side of our loom instead of on the right. But anyway, what we're going to do now is we're here, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do the same thing again, but we're going to pull back all the top rubber bands, grab the bottom 2 rubber bands, they are doubled, and loom the rubber band, continuing that zigzag pattern. And that's pretty much all I can tell you, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward myself, looming the rest of the zigzag pattern until I get here to my first little pin here with the green, or with a B color rubber band. So stop whenever you get to the first pin with B color rubber bands on it. Do not continue. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward. Just use the pause button if you need to. Okay, so as you can see here, I have stopped when I got to this pin here. It's actually a pin before that I stopped on, so I'm going to go ahead and loom one more rubber band. Here we go. So now I have stopped here on this left pin here, where my first B color rubber bands are just sitting there. Now, what you're going to do once you get to this point, is you're going to grab these B color rubber bands underneath of this rubber band you just loomed and pull them over the pin onto these B color rubber bands, or onto these A color rubber bands, goodness. And it might be a little difficult to keep the rubber bands on, but just hold them until you loom the next rubber band and that should help you. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing again. I'm going to show you again. You're going to pull back these A color rubber bands just like you've been doing the whole time, grabbing the bottom 2 A color rubber bands because they are doubled, and continuing that zigzag pattern. So now I'm going inwards to the middle, and you can release these rubber bands here if you're holding them. And now, because I've loomed an A color rubber band, or 2, you're going to go ahead and grab these B color rubber bands that are just sitting on this pin, or whatever pin you're on, and just pull them over the pin and onto the rubber band you just loomed. And you're going to do this going all the way up the remainder of your loom, so whatever's remaining on your loom, all these rubber bands here, you're going to be looming a rubber band and pulling rubber bands over the pin. So every time you loom, you should be pulling rubber bands over. Alright. So we're going to go ahead and continue. I'm going to continue as well, I'm going to be fast forwarding, so use the pause button if you need to. Alright, so as you can see here, I have loomed all of my rubber bands on my loom that need to be loomed, and I've made sure that I do not catch any of these B-color rubber bands inside of the single chain, or double single chain, I guess I should say. And apparently, on this pin here, I have these 2 extra rubber bands, and there's nothing on top. There's nothing on this first middle pin for this next loop of A-color rubber bands. This is supposed to happen. So you're only going to have 2 B-color rubber bands for these 2 A-color rubber bands. So that is supposed to happen. But yeah, that is supposed to happen, so don't worry. So go ahead and just loom that last loop of A-color bands. And once you have, it is now time to take this thing off of our loom and make it a bracelet. So get your clip, and if you're like me and you still have A-color rubber bands left, go ahead and grab those as well. Also keep out your hook because you will need it. Alright, if you have extra A-color rubber bands, just put them off to the side for right now. Right now we're just going to need our hook and our clip. What we're going to do is we're going to get our hook first. Or actually we're going to get our clip first, sorry. So we're going to get our clip first, and what we're going to do is we're going to attach our clip to the first rubber band in this double single chain, or in this bracelet, and that is the cap band. So the arrow should still be pointing towards you. And we're going to be taking our clip and attaching it to this cap band on the first pin, and yeah, so go ahead, get your clip, attach it to your cap band. So very simple for me, just use the pause button if you need to. And once your clip is on, you can pull the cap band off of the pin. So everybody does that, even if you have extra A-color rubber bands. Now what you're going to do is you're going to get your hook, and what you're going to do is you're here on this next pin, we're going to grab all of the rubber bands and just pull them off. And same here, coming out back to the left. Just pull the rubber bands off with your hook. In the middle, going back in the middle, do the same. On the left, again, do the same. And you're going to do this going all the way down your loom. Even on the B-color rubber band and A-color rubber band mix area, we're going to be pulling all of the rubber bands off of our loom, except for these here on the last middle pin. Do not pull these rubber bands off because you will need them so you can attach your clip, and if you have your extra A-color rubber bands, you will need this last rubber band for them as well. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward myself, taking the rest of these rubber bands off. Just use the pause button if you need to. Alright. So as you can see here, I now have my Evergreen Branch bracelet, and I also have this single chain here, and I've taken all of the rubber bands off except for these here on this last middle pin. What you're going to do at this point is you're just going to get your hook, stick it in this last middle pin, and instead of pulling the rubber bands off, you're going to stretch them out to another pin, so just stretch them out to a nearby pin. I'm stretching mine out to the left. And what you're going to do is you're going to attach your clip to these rubber bands here. Now, if you have extra A-color rubber bands, do not do this next step. So if you don't have any extra A-color rubber bands, just get your clip and attach it to this last rubber band. And once they're on, you can just take them off of your loom, and now you have your bracelet. So go ahead and put it on. But now I'm going to show everybody who has extra A-color rubber bands what to do next. So if you have extra A-color rubber bands, make sure your rubber bands are still on your loom, and if they're not, then they should be on your hook. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this. Alright, so if you have extra A-color rubber bands like I do, what you're going to do is, instead of stretching this last rubber band here on this last middle pin out, instead you're going to go in with your hook, pull these rubber bands off of this last middle pin, and we're going to be adding the rest of these A-color rubber bands on with our hook. So, because the whole thing we've added is double rubber bands, we're going to grab 2 rubber bands, put them on our hook like so, slide these rubber bands that are already on our hook onto these new rubber bands we're adding, here we go. And then we're going to push these rubber bands that are already on our hook further down, and these that we're holding with our fingers onto our hook as well. And that's how you add your extra rubber bands. So I'm going to go ahead and show you one more time, because I can only show you one more time. You get your extra rubber bands, make sure there's 2 instead of 1, put them on your hook like so, pull these rubber bands that were already on your hook onto these new rubber bands, then push these rubber bands that are already on our hook further down, and this end here that you're holding with your fingers, put it on your hook as well, and that's that. So if you still have more rubber bands, continue adding them, but once you have finished the chain that you need to make your bracelet, you're going to go ahead and get your clip, stretch the so grab the bracelet and stretch it so this rubber band is stretched out a little bit. Grab your clip and attach it to this stretched out rubber band. And once it's attached, you can go ahead and pull this off of your hook. And now you have your bracelet. And bam! So as you can see here, I am now wearing my Evergreen Branch bracelet. I'm going to take it off. Why not? I'm adjusting my lighting, so yeah, anyway. As you can see here, I now have my Evergreen Branch bracelet, and hopefully you have yours as well. And now it is time for the outro. So, I would like to thank you for watching my tutorial. Hopefully it showed you how to make this bracelet successfully. And if you liked this bracelet, you might like one of these here. So, this first one here that I'm holding right now is the Woolly Bear Caterpillar bracelet. There will be a link to the tutorial for this. Same for this bracelet here, it is called the Spartan Helmet bracelet. There will be a link to both of these tutorials in the description. And there will also be a link to the tutorial for a Christmas tree charm I make using this bracelet pattern thing. So using this bracelet, I make a Christmas tree charm. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the charm real quick. Here it is. It's a little bit messy, but I am currently fixing it. So, yeah, there will be a link to this tutorial as well. So anyway, that's pretty much it for this tutorial here. And that's all I have to say, other than thanks for watching, and bye!